Nice.
It's amazing.
Very nice.
But this is in Reiki's hands, so I'm not gonna. I
Yes.
will try and catch you later, though.
Okay, deal. Hi.
Okay.
Hello, hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another round of our Village Builders Alliance. Is there a name for this yet? Jeremy, you're making logos. Do we have a proper name?
It's we started off as Rebuild Alliance, and then I suddenly went on a tangent for no fucking reason, beknownst to me, to Village Alliance, and now it's like Rebuild Village Alliance, and I just can't. I haven't got my head on.
Right.
I'm claiming concussion. I dived into a swimming pool on Saturday and hit a wall.
Rebuilding. You know, why don't we just do RVA, and we don't necessarily know what they stand for yet.
That works.
Yeah, let me pass it to Sam. He's generally got a lot going on, so.
Do I? Okay. Well, I thought today we should maybe take the time and you said that model that you guys have been using for listing out talent and skills and commitments. Maybe we should start doing something a bit like that. So we can start having an idea of who is actually part of it, who's going to be building things and what, and how much time everyone is committed to. I think that might be the most useful thing. Anyone else has anything they want to go over today otherwise?
Oh, Vish is here.
Hey, Vishal.
Vishal.
Hey, wonderful people. Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. Good to hear you.
Cool. All right, let me see if I can find. I think you sent it to me, like you're right.
Yep. So if anyone's got anything to add to the agenda, just feel free to put it in the chat. Just a quick intro to some people who are just joining us. Hi, Don. Hi, David. These calls are always a little bit dynamic. We don't necessarily know who shows up. Last calls were a lot bigger, so we had more of a discussion topic group, but now it seems like people who are really focused on actually building this thing are who's continuing to show up, which is probably kind of nice. So something I would love to do on the agenda is, one, having that role clarity, I think is awesome. So that Sam, that's what we put it there for number one. Second, I wanted to go a little bit more over the UI UX, so what the village village toolkit looks like. So we had that call this week, so we can share a little bit about what happened there. So does anyone else have anything else they want to see happen today?
Jeremy, do you want to maybe recap where you're at with a fun piece? So then we can do overview of the village in a box and overview of the funding. And I don't think there's been any discussions for the other topics yet, but.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Can we do that now?
Maybe.
No,
Yeah, let's start with maybe the roles. Like if you can make me a co-host or allow me to share screen, then I can share the document you sent over.
I'll do both.
Okay, so but actually maybe you wanna lead this. I don't know how you guys. I guess this was a template from. Is this from Samara or something?
Yeah, that's Samara's template. Yeah.
Okay. So should I just clear those? Is that how it works? And then we are starting from scratch and filling all of these different things, or? Well, I don't know, maybe one of you want to run it. I don't know how you guys have set up this spreadsheet normally. Reiki, do you want to? Or
Sure.
I don't know.
I thought who's going to take this over. Sure, so we can copy this and change out some of the names. So I think maybe we can just delete what's under the Samara team. And maybe we can put in RVA there. And I can give a kind of an overview here. So if you just update the months to the current months, and yeah, that's kind of nice. Actually, if I'm going to do this, maybe if you just share this in the chat, and then I will, so I can use my mouse and actually show people what I'm talking about. So can you share this again in the chat for me to go over?
How's the link? Yeah. Here you go.
So everyone now has this, so I think it'd be great if we all kind of just go to it, because then we can type in our own names and whatnot. Cool. So how did this actually happen? So we've got this thing called S tokens. So that was for Samara. We can call them, RVA tokens. And this is our contribution accounting token. So this is how we're tracking our contributions to this alliance. And these are earning tokens that are contributing right now. So there's going to be a combination here. If we do run that quest with Haifa, which we will, some people will be getting paid upfront. What you're not getting paid upfront, you're getting paid in these tokens. So everyone's contributions are being accounted for. Maybe you're getting paid in cash, or maybe you're taking tokens, right? What do these tokens actually mean? We don't necessarily know yet. That's something we do get to create and design together. I do think RVA is this Regenerative Village Alliance. So I do believe this RVA token will, look more like an index fund. That's having a fractional share ownership of all the different projects that we're hosting and launching and supporting and all that fun stuff and within this alliance. So I think that's the future value of this token, is when people across the world, they want to invest in different types of regenerative village models, and they love that idea and they want to get behind it, then they can go ahead and buy up the RVA token. And we can get into a tokenomics session at another time. So what is this 2? This 2 is a multiplier. So a model that we've been running with is when you first join, a startup organization like this, there's much higher risk that these tokens turn into nothing, right? So we wanted to compensate that risk by saying, okay, well, if you're showing up right now, you're going to get this 2 multiplier. And what Samara did is they had 2 for their first 3 months. And then you see here by month 4, that multiplier went down to 1.8. I don't know if it kept dropping, but I would recommend that it does. So as our, our ecosystem here matures, the multiplier slowly starts ticking down. This is something that Haifa did. We also started off, we actually started off at 1 multiplier. So for every $1 of value you brought to Haifa, you got 1 token. And over time, that multiplier's dropped, and right now it's like 0.125. So it's much smaller than when we started. This is also how we value the ecosystem. So this is our contribution accounting. We're saying we're tracking all the value that comes in. We're using dollar terms. So if people are coming in and saying, hey, we're doing $4,900 worth of value, etc. We have this idea of how much value we've supposedly captured within our alliance. So Samara is saying they've captured $124,000 worth of value. And this is what we would compare against the value of our ecosystem. So if investors come in and they say, actually, you guys have done incredible stuff, we're going to buy in at 2 million, then all of a sudden our tokens that we were earning at a valuation of $124,000 are now worth 20 times that, or whatever it is, right? So that's where the rubber meets the road, is we're tracking the value of this, saying every dollar comes in, we're going to give 1 token out, and that's how we're doing contribution accounting. That's not necessarily saying what the tokens are worth. That was kind of a lot, and then hoping that landed. Otherwise, I can explain it more. Does that make sense? Yeah, thumbs up. Cool.
I'm not quite sure how this translates to. Like, do you have stuff about roles and stuff? Or is that a separate?
Yeah, we can get into roles. This is just the contribution accounting, is what you actually brought up here. So, but I could bring up the roles thing a little bit. Yeah, I can do that. I'll just
understand a little bit how, for example, I guess in here you would have to value what, like, the work that we're going to be doing, but then we need to set the roles for what we are expecting everyone to be doing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And how we're compensating that. So one more consideration we'll have to go through is, how do we want to compensate each other? Do we want to say that we're all contractor basis, where we come in and say, I want $5,000 and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z? Or do we do a salary basis, which is what Samara is doing here? They're saying, okay, I'm 42% full-time, and they had different full-time salaries here. So they're tracking more of a percentage of their full-time. People are coming in on 10%, whatever. So that's another way to do it, is we can say, all right, well, we have these different salary bands with different complexities based on them. People say, you know what, I'm the lowest level complexity because I'm doing very basic stuff, or I'm the highest level complexity because I'm doing the most complex stuff. And people kind of sort themselves out based on the complexity of how they're showing up. Multiply that by the time which they're showing up, and that makes their compensation. So that's one way of going about this that we felt like is a lot simpler because it's not trying to put a number to everything we're doing. It's more saying, you know, there's 3 choices on the level of complexity we're showing up here. And then I show, you know, how much full time that I'm going to commit to this. Put those 2 together, and that's going to say how much you're actually getting compensated. So with that background, then I can kind of take you to the roles in the handbook to unpack this.
Reki, can I add something to that process here?
Sure can.
So this is kind of Genesis activities, as I will call it. You know, this is before you have a do. This is just sort of writing down historical contributions. You know, you've done some thought work, you've done some preliminary work before you get to the point that the organization has formed, right? And once the organization is kind of official, at that point, you want to plug in all of the work that already happened, right? So that's the idea of this spreadsheet really, is to say, okay, now we've collected certain value tokens, RVA tokens. We've added voice. We earned some voice tokens here, right? And once the do is up and running, all you do is provide your contribution that lists these tokens, right? Now in this spreadsheet, where you confirm that we have the tokens, and then once the do is up and running, you plug it in, and then everybody has a starting point, right? So already has a significant amount of RVAs and voice tokens, and then from there the transition really to work with the do and get into, you know, the next wave of contributions of voting for roles is much easier. And that's one of the attentions here. Another thing is, this is really sort of an honest distribution of what every member feels is his or her own contribution. There's another one called co-evaluation on the next tab, which takes us a step further. We don't have to get into this right now. Maybe that's another session. But this basically says we evaluate all of the percentage contributions that we listed against each other, right? So everybody steps in here, and you see that on the left side are the participants, and across the top are the people who evaluate the other participants. That gives you an average, and it's a very fair way of distributing and confirming that these percentages are actually correct. You know, nobody can step out and say, well, I worked 100% on this project, and you didn't, right? You didn't even show up, or you just worked in a very low capacity. So this prevents this from happening here in this co-evaluation sheet. This is ideal for some things like a quest, right? When you say you have a budget for a quest, and at the end of the quest, you want to see how much did everyone contribute to the quest? And this gives you exactly the right numbers and percentages. And then you can plug that in and give everyone the reward at the end of the quest. Okay, I'll stop here.
Yeah, so this is the journey we've been on for the last 3 years, is how do we use collective intelligence or different forms of it to figure out value distributions, right? And try to do things a little bit more fair. Because in the legacy world, it's all about who you know and how you negotiate and whatever and all that nonsense determines how much money you're going to make. Here we wanted to make things a little bit more fair and balanced and led by your peers. So this is an effort to do that. There's a whole massive rabbit hole to dive down, so we can do that maybe another time or wherever the desire is. But
so I just have a question, because here if we're already starting to break down tokens into contributions, how do you from the traditional world, like what's the total capital or whatever that we're raising, or like what's the total amount of tokens that we are issuing, and how does that play out between Haifa and the other organizations that are contributing stuff into this initial pool?
Yeah, it'd be the same way. I mean, you can look at this as, as traditional equity, and these are all the founders. And this is exactly how you would use it too, this is how you split the pie, so to speak, of the initial equity of a company.
Okay.
Again, right now it's like, well, I'm founder, so I own 100%. And this guy, I really like him, I'm going to give him 20%. And maybe I give 3% to every advisor. I don't know. There's so many different ways to do that, and most of them are nonsense.
So it all goes into this team sheet.
Yeah, exactly. So this is how we do it. We're self-assessing who the founder team is, how much they're showing up, and this is how we're splitting the initial equity, essentially. So if we were going to bring in an investor, it's basically the exact same idea. This guy did $4,900 worth of work, or he gave $4,900 worth of capital. We treat that the exact same. And that's how Haifa did it too. When investors came in with cash, we treated it the exact same as, you know, time and effort. Because and at the end of the day, it is. If we get that cash and we have to pay someone for the same work, it's treated the exact same as if someone did that work without getting paid, right? So we treated it the same. And they got the same multiplier too, which is really great. You know, encourages investors to get in early, take on that more risk, and get the higher reward. So all that model is kind of built into this. All right, so we can go down to this. I know this is a lot that we're conveying all at once. And if we aren't wanting to dive in this complexity, because I know this isn't necessarily our mission here, to rethink these, then we're happy to run with the model that Samara did. They just stress tested it. It worked really well for them. So it might be something that we can just, you know, plug and play and maybe tweak around the edges if we feel like it. All right, so here's it's called the Haifa Handbook. This is our organization handbook. At some point, we probably want to make one for here, but let me share this in the chat just in case anyone else wants to dive into this. And it's more of an exploration in how we do decentralized human organizations, what it looks like. This is the working doc, so that's why it looks so terrible. So let me bring up the actual one. So don't use that link that I sent you. Delete it and hide it forever. Just kidding. If you want to look at all the working weird stuff that we're working on, then, you know, feel free to go into that one. Okay, let's go down to roles. We tried to also simplify roles. In the legacy world, there's infinite amounts of different job postings that people can have, right? And there's a lot to try to unpack there. So we wanted to break it down into saying there's 5 basic ways that people show up in an organization. We spent a lot of time trying to unpack what are these archetypal contributions, and I think we're pretty happy with these 5. So here's the 5 different ways that somebody could show up. You know, you're building and developing. And that works for all sorts of contexts. You know, if you're coding, if you're building software, or if you're physically building a village, right? You know, these are the builders and developers, the ones that are taking ideas and literally bringing them into reality. Then we have the researchers and architects. These are the ones that are designing the systems, right? We have facilitators and space holders. These are the ones that are like facilitating calls, maintaining the health and balance of the system. These are typically the people, like HR in a traditional company, right? You have catalyzing and connecting. These are the ones that are, you know, maybe like a salesman, for example. These are the ones that are actually building bridges. In our ecosystem, it would be the ones that are actually on the ground helping other villages get set up. So these are the ones that are taking the knowledge of villages, bringing it to other places, and catalyzing, making those bridges and building connections, right? And then finally, we have storytelling and communicating. So this is making art, making videos, telling the story. And we've kind of found that regardless of how you're showing up, it fits into one of these 5 basic areas. And I challenge us to try to figure out a new one if we're missing something here. So this is how we've kind of simplified. You say, okay, well, I'm building and developing. And then, okay, how do you get compensated? You take what you're doing, and then you come down here to this complexity chart, right? So this is how we do compensation in Haifa. You say what you're doing, and then the different levels of bands, how much you're going to get paid. So I can actually show you that here, little chart. How much you get paid is based on your band and the amount of time you're showing up. So if you're a band 1 and you're showing up 100% of the time, then you're getting, you know, $5,800 a month. If you're band 7 and you're 100% of the time, then you're getting $1,500 or $15,000 value a month. So this is kind of what it looks like. Is we have 7 different levels of complexity in Haifa. Samara chose 3 different levels. They said, you know, 7's too much. We want to do more of a universal basic income type in our organization. So they said they only have 3. So this is probably where we are going to have the most kind of dialogue, is how many different bands do we actually want? Do we feel like 7's too much, that's too far, or do we have less levels of complexity in our organization? So we can feel free to dive into this a little bit. How much do I want to share here without overwhelming you all? And looking at the time, okay. I'll do this super briefly. So the lowest level of complexity is you're basically taking orders, essentially. Not necessarily, but it's a very clear task what needs to happen and what you need to do. There's not much thinking or complexity that needs to show up. You kind of punch in through the clock, get stuff done, and leave. all the way down to 7, where it's the most highest complex thing that you could be taking on. You're dreaming about it, you're thinking about it in the shower, it's basically taking over your life. And you're the one that's coordinating and, you know, delivering complexity to other folks, and then everything in between, right? So that's kind of the idea, is how much of your mind space and how much of your life is really being enveloped in this process, in this project. And that's going to talk about the different levels of complexity. And then there's the responsibility and accountability, like how much are you going to be taking on? Are you the one that's holding space for others and building teams and coordinating those teams? That's much more responsibility and complexity than someone who's just, you know, showing up to the team, right? Or are you all the way down here at the bottom where you're building new teams and you're, you know, opening up new avenues for things to be able to expand and grow? So I think we could probably also follow Samara's ideology here and just break it down into 3 different levels of complexity to simplify what we're doing here. And I can offer up a model for that. But now I feel like I've gone on for a long time, and I'll just pause here in case there's any questions.
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm curious to know, I guess, because you've been through this process, I presume, how do organizations land on 4 or 7? Like, what is the dynamic in the team itself that would drive something like that?
A couple things that I've noticed is, one, based off of, you know, their own ethics and the way they like to see the world. Some people like it more egalitarian than others. The second thing is what type of organization, how much complexity is really, you know, part of that organization. Say you're a writers guild, then you could probably have 1, because everyone's a writer. We're all kind of writing the same stuff. There's no different level of complexity. Then everyone's just kind of on the same level. Right? But if you're, you know, a traditional, you know, Fortune 500, you probably want 13 levels, because there's a whole lot of different things that are happening in that organization. So it really depends on
that makes sense. Okay.
Who's trying to accomplish, and also their own ethics on what they think is, you know, fair way to compensate people.
And then one more question, if you humor me. Is it something that you can change your role? I mean, like, let's say I'm, you know, I don't diving into, I don't know, one set of activities or whatever that the organization is involved in, but in another iteration or on another project, I'm actually a different level because I'm doing a different set of activities. Does it work like that? Or are you just kind of like, this is what I'm committed to, I'm going to be a B1 and that's what I'm going to stay, because that's me?
Yeah. So each level of complexity is attached to that archetypal contribution. So you would say, and one person can have 5 different ones. I could say, hey, I'm building and developing, but at the lowest level of complexity, and I'm storytelling at the highest level of complexity. Great. So one person could be showing up in a myriad different ways and a myriad different levels of complexity, whatever meets how they're showing up, right?
Got it.
Yeah, and again, this has been, you know, 3 years of kind of retinkering this and rethinking this, but we feel like we've kind of landed on something nice here that can kind of collapse infinite levels of complexity down to something, you know, manageable.
And so I have a question. How do you, because like, since we're all coming in here with, I mean, essentially putting in sweat equity and building this together, I mean that we kind of all founders and we get like a share of like this due, but how do you already have predetermined like salaries, for example, because we don't even know how we're gonna generate income or like anything like that. How would that work?
Yeah, so the salary is the value that we're paying ourselves. And I think this is actually a really fair model that, you know, at least within Haifa, that they really appreciated. Because again, what's the traditional way? Someone shows up, they're like, this is my idea, I own 100% of this. Well, what have you done to get 100% of it? Well, because it was my idea. And now this thing's valued at $20 million. So now all of a sudden I own 100% of this $20 million thing, and maybe I put 6 months effort into it. So now that person's valuing themselves at $40 million a year for the time and effort that they put into this thing, right? And that's generally how it works. There's not a lot of accounting that goes into that. But what we said is we actually track, you know, the dollar value of time that all the founders are putting into it too, over the time that they're putting into it. And then we get to tell an investor that way, like, well, how did he earn 4% of the organization? Well, this is literally how he earned it. This is the time and energy he put into it. And you're getting the same deal. So investors kind of really liked that because it was more, you know, fair and egalitarian for them. So that's basically how, you know, we've done it. Did that actually answer your question?
I'm just more curious how you map out to the actual dollar amount for the salaries. Like, I mean, wouldn't the investors more look at the output rather than the input when they're determining like the value of the due, for example?
Totally, yes. The input is the time, and that's just how you split the pie. The output, of course, is going to determine whether or not they're going to invest in it or not anyway. This isn't going to answer your question, but this is relevant. We chose our base salary at 70,000 based on a couple of reasons. One, Harvard did a study and it showed that, you know, after people are making $70,000 a year, money isn't a determinant on their quality of life and their level of happiness. And we thought if someone's working 100% of their time on something, then money shouldn't be an object to them. It shouldn't, you know, make their life less happy based on their salary. So we said no one gets paid less than 70,000 for their base salary. What we also found is if everyone was paid the same in the US, the average salary would be 130,000. So then we said, okay, well, 70 is our base level. 130,000 is going to be our average. We also came up with 7 levels of complexity. So that's how we got to ours. Is, you know, base was 70, 90, 110, 130. So that's how we figured out our salary distribution. Samara used 70, 90, and 110. So they just took the bottom 3 of that. And that was their 3 buckets. So we could do something similar to that. And I think we also need to do it based off of fair market value of the things that we're doing. So that would be helping us determine where on that band we're sitting. If we are a specialty house doing high-end blockchain development, we might be on the high end of that because the market is going to pay us, you know, 150 to 190,000 a year. So we'd use the top end of that. So it depends. And I think we're probably in the middle based on the quality and the effort we're doing here. What this means, though, is this is just how we're distributing tokens. So we might not have the fiat to pay the 190,000, but we're giving you $190,000 worth of tokens. Are they worth that right now? We don't know, and probably not. And hopefully they're worth a lot more than that. But that's just how we're doing this, the pie splitting, for example. So when 4 people are showing up, you know, one's showing up at 190,000, the other one's showing up at 110. Well, over time, sorry, let's just do it super simple. There's 2 people, you know, one's showing up at 100,000, the other one's showing up at 200,000. You know, over time, that means that 200,000 person is going to own 66% of the organization, and the other one's going to own 33%, right? So that's all it is. It's saying, how did that guy earn 66%? Well, he showed up at twice the level of complexity for the last 3 months.
Okay.
So that's, again, it's just how do we split the pie of who ons this thing, right? It's just the way.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just confusing to see those dollar amounts up front because, I mean, it's not actual dollar amounts until like the dollar amount would be determined whenever there's dollars to convert it to, no?
Totally. Yeah. Again, it's a pie splitting exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, we call it US dollar equivalent. So this is really just a placeholder to say, if 70,000, then how does that translate? What's your formula to translate that into your compensation, right? Is it 1-to-1? Is it 1-to-1.5? You know, you double this. You know, that's really the baseline, and it doesn't have any meaning other than this is what Mikey earlier mentioned, right? That's the market value. That's the average that's out there. That's all.
Hopefully this works out better for us. Hypha, for example, we're 20 to 100x under market value. We haven't taken in traditional capital, so we're not being market valued right now. But how we're tracking and valuing the token is 20 to 100x less than what similar organizations in the crypto space are doing, right? So ideally, that's how we would be doing it too, is we're doing it really low. So when you're saying to the founders here, you're getting $190,000 worth of value, it's very likely that it's going to be a lot more than that if we're successful, or it's going to be nothing at all, you know, and
right.
us to kind of figure that one out, right?
No, that makes sense. Thanks for explaining. So should we maybe try and just go through and add our skills and how much time we want to commit?
Totally. Let's take a first draft of this. I like it. So let me share again, and I can go to this Excel sheet. So what we can do here is on the left side, if you're feeling like you're wanting to take on a role, you know, just feel free to throw in your name. I got you, Sam. Let's zero these things out. Yeah, awesome. And nothing here is set in stone. This is why we like using this Excel sheet first before putting it into a do. And this is the standard process anyway, because then we could figure everything out rather than coding in a 2x multiplier like the do would do. We're just going to put it in here on paper, see how it lands. Maybe we like 2x, maybe we want it to be 1.8. So it's a lot easier to keep tweaking this until we get something we like. And once we've landed on a model that feels really good for all of us, then we codify it in the do, and that's when we can launch our own organization. So we probably want to run with this for the first 3 months. And then, when the multi-tenant dues are ready, then we'll launch ours. So maybe this due will officially launch as a decentralized organization, maybe in, August or September. Until then, we can be a due on an Excel sheet.
Sounds good.
And then we could tweak these too. So we can tweak the numbers. That's some stuff that we can change. Again, we can keep tweaking all of this. But I want to get a first sense check for you guys on if you like doing just 3 bands versus 7. So maybe that could be like our first decision we make here is, what level of complexity do we want to play with here? Do you want a fairly egalitarian organization? Or maybe we have 1 band. So that's kind of a question I would ask for every one of us to actually answer here is, do we want 1 band where everyone's getting paid the same? It's just everyone's time is of equal value here. Or do we say there's 3 levels of complexity? People who are, holding the space. They're the ones that are, hosting the calls, pulling people together, like really holding the fort down. Versus on the bottom, those are the people that are kind of just showing up being contractors. They get told kind of what to do and they do it. And then the people in the middle. So that's kind of how Samara did it in very short order. Those are their 3 different levels of complexity. Or we can have 1, or we could have 7. So anyway, that's what I would love for us to kind of go 1 round around. You can speak to that, share a little bit about what you think about this model, but I'd love to, kind of hear from everyone. If you don't have an opinion right now, that's great, and we can always come back to this, but got your hands up.
I suppose we can simplify at the beginning. So 1 or 3, I think, is the most that we should think for now until we get more complex organization, and then we can rethink it again.
From my end, and I'm speaking for Samara too here, is at the beginning when you do these historical contributions, right, the Genesis contributions, I would keep it at a single salary band, simply because it's hard to start already evaluating who's doing, work at a higher complexity band than others. This is really sort of more attuned towards the roles, right? Once you have a longer term role in the organization, right, then you attach the complexity to that, and then you can distinguish more. Is it, B1, B2, B3? So I would suggest early on, just what Samara did here is just fill in the spreadsheet with your % contribution that translates into the different token values. And you notice there's also no salary band really attached to that. It is good to have it up there to, check back and see eventually once we go to the next stage of the organization, that's the kind of salary bands and complexity levels we want to see. Just want to weave this in here.
So, I can't edit. I don't know if others can edit. Maybe you need to tweak permissions on it. I think one band is great for the beginning, like you said, because we don't really know. And then maybe like down the road, I think maybe 2 bands for the short term is what I would see, like people who are stewards, who are really like committed, who come every week, and then people who are more like contractors, what you mentioned. That's what I would see.
Does anyone have a different perspective?
Hello, everybody. And I like personally what Sam said, and maybe starting with the basic and then going to 2 and farther on, eventually deciding on 3.
So we can condense complexity really quickly. Awesome, I love it. Cool, so then put your name here if you want to contribute. Then the next slide is going to be what percentage of your time. And we could be this a little retroactively. May's not over yet. So how we can do this is after each month, we could actually look back and say, during May, I spent X% of my time working here. So this is something that we can just look back and reflect as we get through it. So then the final thing then, and I think we're actually done here because that's pretty simple at this point. We just track the percentage of our time we're showing up, and we can use the honesty system right now unless we feel like we want to bring this out later and kind of, assess each other. That'd be fun. Then the last piece is just on roles. So maybe we can get an idea here of what one of the 5 types you feel like you are, and I can bring that up again, and then you can just put it next to your name. and say kind of what you're doing, because that signals to other people as well, what you're doing. So when people show up and they're like, hey, we've got this UI design, then they'll come and talk to the builders, knowing that's them, or etc. Or a story to share, they're going to go and talk to the storyteller, right? So here's the 5 again. I can just show you guys, and then you can fill whatever feels right to you. You can put it in there. So we have one type again is building and developing. So these are people that are actually going to be coding the village in the box that we're building, because I think that's one of our takeaways. Yep. And then we have the researching and architecting. So this is, reaching out to villages, seeing what they need, architecting what the village in the box actually needs. So doing the research, understanding what needs to actually happen, put it down on paper, and designing structures. So the architects, right? Then we have facilitating and space holding. This is someone who wants to hold space for calls, welcoming new people into the movement. I don't know if we actually need this type of role yet, but maybe we're not mature enough for that. But anyway, we have it there. Catalyzing, connecting, I would also imagine we're not quite here for that because we need something to catalyze and connect to other people. But it might be a really good signal, especially for anyone who's actually watching this that wants to be that, to come in here, signal that you're doing that, and maybe your contribution's 10% because you're just learning about what tools we're building here and getting ready to actually take it out there to villages when we're ready to bring it to them, right? So we still have space for those types of folks to show up right now. And then finally, storytelling and communicating. So again, if you're wanting to write art, create media, content, share what we're doing here, that'll be the final role. So does that make sense? Do we like this model? I don't want to force anyone or anything on anyone here, but yeah, I'd love to get some reflections on how we all feel about this.
Sorry, go on. Go for it.
No, I was just gonna say that I think it's nice to have like kind of a major and a minor, because I think a lot of us are already like looking at different things. So I don't know if like being exactly in one of the categories, like, so, I mean, Sam, I know he's like building and developing, but for sure he's a space holder and so on. So I think, yeah, somehow we can reflect that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually a really big debate that we had. This is great. It was the difference between archetype, as in this is who you are, versus archetypal contribution, as in this is what you're doing. And people can be doing multiple things. So I'd say absolutely. And what we'll eventually get to is where you're actually saying how much of each one you're doing on 50% building and 50% facilitating, or 30, 30, 30, or whatever. So we'll eventually move to that. But in the meantime, if you feel like you're both of these things or multiple, put multiple. If you're all of the things, then yeah, go for it. We might just come up with a cool name if you're everything and just call it Matrix. I am all.
Raki, can I maybe show that in the duo, because we just went through the process with the new archetypes, and it would be good to see that in action, in live action.
Why not? Jeremy, you got something?
Oh yeah, it's all good. It was actually just repeating what Annie said. I like the major and the minor, and you guys covered that. I was wondering also, like, where does UX UI fit into that? Does it fit in the building?
If you're actually building and like constructing the UX UI, absolutely. If it's more researching and understanding it, getting user feedback, that sort of thing, then researching and architecting. So if you're the literal designer taking that researcher's stuff and putting it into the real world, then you're a builder. So, the researchers and the architects work really closely with the builders, right? As all architects and builders work closely, right? Yeah, so roles.
Go to the assignments, I think.
Are they not up yet?
Well, that's it.
Yeah, so what we did is now with 7 complexity levels and 5 different archetypal contributions. So 7 times 5 is 35. So we only have 35 different I guess, assignments. These are assignment proposals, so there's people getting into them, which means that they're all here. Oh yeah, why not? Let me get into this, and I'll actually show an example of what people are doing.
Right.
Yeah, good point. I don't know if we have to necessarily do this here, but this is to just lay the foundation of what's what we potentially could do. So what someone comes in and says is Julio's applied to be architecting at a B5 complexity, right? How does he justify that? He's going to come in here and say what he's doing to be architecting at a B5 complexity. So he says what his purpose is, his accountabilities here, sets them up, talks about what domain he's going to control, and then his OKRs. So OKRs are objectives and key results. We find this really helpful, especially in decentralized teams. We don't have a headquarters. We're not showing up and working together. Like most of us haven't even met each other, unfortunately. But this is how we get an idea of what other people are doing and signaling to others. An objective is what you're here to actually get done, and the key results is like really breaking it down into measurable things that we can track and say, yep, you did get those things done. And this is helping us get clarity on how we're showing up here and then signaling that to everyone else so everyone knows what we're all doing. So if you are wanting to take on a role, then I would say get clear on what the objective for that role is and what that actually looks like you're wanting to do. So if you're a designer, you're saying, yeah, my objective is to design the best village, UI imaginable. And my key results is to come out with, 3 new widgets this month or whatever it is. Does that make sense? So I think we could follow this. Again, it's kind of, we've always been trying to figure out the least amount of complexity to get what we need done. And this is kind of what we've landed on, but all of this could, of course, improve and evolve. I'm just sensing a story in my head that I'm giving way too much. That's what's being asked for. So I want to check if I'm taking us too far, or if this is what we're asking for. So.
Are you gonna send the recording, Reiki? I feel like I will need
yeah
definitely to rewatch this.
Cool. Yeah, all of this will be recorded and shared. Cool. And if you want, you can actually come here into the do and look real time what people are doing and get a kind of a feel for it. It's fun. Play around in here. And then of course this is what our do could, if we do one, eventually look like. So we would have our different bands and different roles out there. Fun stuff. All right, looking at the agenda, we have a couple other things to cover, so I'm going to stop here unless there's any final questions that people would really like to know.
Well, I think what would be helpful is if we can, should we add a column in here maybe to add, yeah, like what everyone is going to be working on. Also, well, you briefly mentioned the domains, but maybe we should say, okay, like I'm going to take the build leadership for doing the village in a box or for doing the region fund or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, I like that. So what we could do is you could put in how you're showing up, however many contribution types you're showing up here. And does it make sense to do it on here? Yeah, why not? Let's just make another column. And it can get a little fat and weird. And then you can just put your objectives. You don't have to break it down into key results yet. You can just kind of high level signal what your objective here to accomplish. Is that what you're talking about, Sam?
Yeah, and I think some of those had problems accessing the document. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I looked at it here. It says everyone can edit, but let me change it just to the same thing. Anyone with a link can edit. Yeah. So let me try sharing it into the chat again.
It's working for me. I don't know. Sasha, can you try again?
Yeah, I'm just trying. It says still you need access, so I'm not sure. I'm gonna try again.
Strange.
Yeah. Well, if you can't get access, just give me your email in the chat box and I'll just plug you in manually. Okay, cool. So we have 2 more things on the agenda today and we've got about 14 minutes left. So let's see if we can cover them. So maybe I'll pass it to Jeremy. You can take the floor to get into the fun.
Cool. Thank you, Reiki. That was a really great explanation. Amazing to see what you guys have been working on and seeing the Haifa dashboard like that. That's really cool. So with the fund, there've been about 5 to 10 of us coming together around this over the course of the last few weeks. We began by collating everything that everybody had been talking about within the Discord channel putting it into a working doc. Within there, we've got maybe about like 10 to 15 different alternative fund structures types. There's a broad array of different approaches, going from TradFi and accessing existing possible income capital, and into looking at more kind of DeFi and token, etc. And then thinking about maybe how that could be applied at different stages. We then started thinking about what a thesis could be around the Regen Fund. And so then started a working doc on that. And that was around trying to think about how funds could be reimagined as regenerative in their essence and what that means. And so I've been, doing research and, pulling ideas from, what you guys at Seeds have done and what other kind of like, thought leaders are doing. And really it's just like trying to get something onto paper to begin with. And there's an invitation for anybody and everybody to come and help, like, build that out. And really it was just like a starting a way to help people jump in and be part of that process. And we've had one meetup this week where we continue that conversation. I recorded it and put it into the group. And again, that was a kind of went into discussing the different types of scenarios that an investor could be investing in whatever format they're investing. And so that kind of went into there too. And that's pretty much where we got to. And there's still a lot more work to be done. But I think there's quite interestingly starting to emerge different people where they want to create different focuses and maybe create different funds. So we'll see multiple funds start to occur, and they could be for different purposes, different scenarios, different types of investors, different stages of the project, etc. And using traditional financing and normal kind of modern means. And that could be really wonderful and exciting to see how that emerges.
Yeah, epic. I want to just add to that because we have a cool little model here of how the DO can facilitate all this. Yeah, because we can build different, dues or circles rather within our alliance that has different investment thesis. So an investor can actually come in here, and each one of these different pods is investing into different levels of villages or different types of technology, right? So like Rebuild can be, situated here, or this could be a startup for villages. My vision right now is, 2023 is the year of the initial village offering, where we have all the technology together that villages are able to come in here and raise capital from across the globe to, fund their villages. And I think that'd be awesome. Or you have like more of a traditional institutional capital pool going on right here. So each one of these could be their different pools within the alliance itself. And then investors can come in and say, hey, I want to invest, X amount into the whole alliance itself, and then they'll let the alliance decide which one of these circles those funds are going to flow to, or I want to earmark my capital into certain pools. So the investors then have a choice of how they want to earmark their capital, which is really great because that means we can let 1,000 flowers bloom. Like this alliance doesn't have to come up with 1 or 3 different investment theses. We can have infinite, as many circles as we want to make, right? So that way we can try a lot more diversity and kind of let all of it happen, and let natural selection kind of decide what wins out and what does the best. And that's how we can learn, just kind of aligning with evolution that way. So yeah, this is the model I think we could, start with, and gives a lot of flexibility that way. Does this make sense? I mean, are we aligned to this idea? Anyone not aligned to this? We're getting rid of the B and builders, so we're just RVA. Cool. Does anyone else have anything for Jeremy? Or on fundraising in general, or any of those topics? Easy. Then the last thing, and then we can just start a checkout round so that we're right on time because we love that. I did mention in this to not put anything here because we can look back. But I think actually if we could, just for the next couple months, and just use it as a signal for how much time you can expect to show up, because I think that'll be really helpful for all of us to get an idea that, you're coming in here and saying, yeah, I'll be a builder, I'm going to do the UI, and I'm going to be putting in 100%. That's going to be a lot more helpful than, knowing you're only at 10% or whatnot. So we can use these categories to just signal out how much of our time we'd be willing to put into this project. That'd be really helpful. Cool. Then I will stop sharing this. And maybe what we can do is we can just do a quick round of checkouts and sharing any thoughts that you have or anything. So whoever wants to go first, take it away and then pass it.
Let me start. I have to hop off to another call real quick. I want to check out with a slide here. Just telling you that this is going to be a journey you'll be on until we get to the thing on the right side, right? So there's going to be a couple of steps until you see the formation and sort of the structural element coming out of the RVA. And within each of these entities, you know, how they are structured and what the domains are looking like and how the circles and rows are playing out with that. It's a fairly, you know, evolved process, so be prepared. There's a lot of conversation going back and forth. I'm sure that finally gives you the last stage here. It's really an ongoing stage, right? From there, you dynamically change the organization again and again. So it's really important to see this as a transition, as a journey until you arrive there. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I was just, if I can talk, just wondering about the timing effort. Should it be a percentage or hours or by hours? Because 100% can be something for one person maybe and something else for another. I don't know what you think about that. I don't know if I was clear about it.
Do you drink a lot of Red Bull, Ali? You got like 23 hours of a day.
Well, depends. Actually, yeah, in the winter, it's for me, like even the summer is different from the winter. Yeah, in the summer, I don't sleep much. But I don't know, it depends also how many hours one person wants to work. You know, some people 100% is 5 hours. For some other, it's 10. You know, depends on the stages of one's life as well. It has been very different, at least for me, what was 100% a few years ago than what is now. So
I don't think ours is a good
personal.
size because as well, I mean, we see how it works in traditional way, like 8 hours, but you can spend 8 hours not concentrating enough or not doing the most of it. I suppose it's mostly, I don't think ours is a good size. I suppose it's mostly your involvement or, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Yeah,
Actually,
just wondering.
I think Samara phrased that yeah, so that's more like a percentage of your attention. So it's not about, you know, dividing you 40 hours a week. It's more about like you can only do so many projects at once. So for example, from my side, I expect to do something like 30 to 40% on this and 30 to 40% on Dream Factory, and then 30% of my on my other job. So that's kind of how I'm thinking of dividing it, but I think anyone can think about, yeah, just what makes sense for you.
Yeah, maybe when it's like small, like contractors or so, it also makes sense, something with the milestones or something that you want to, like when you achieved your objective, that's harder to measure in contribution, because maybe it's just a full-time effort for a week, and that was like something that you came in to do into this project. So that's a little bit different, but I don't think we're at that complexity. I think it's a good start just to measure the effort in attention.
And maybe to cut through the complexity, put in whatever you want. In a percentage, if you want to do percentage, or just put in hours if you want to track that, and then we can retroactively go back and kind of align it all. So I don't think we have to decide on anything yet.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I do have to drop off. I'm hosting another call in 3 minutes. So I love you all, and I'll let you all do check out and then close it. And I will see you all next week. So
see you tomorrow or next week.
Bye.